Did you want to just introduce yourself and your photography?
Yeah, my name is Trevor. I trade or practice under the name of the Pure Image Works, which goes really to the heart of what I believe photography is about. It just emphasizes the fact that I'm very much about taking photographs and not spending hours in front of computers to get the image looking absolutely stunning. One hopes that after a certain length of time you build up enough expertise so that you don't actually have to do that. My practice is predominantly in what I loosely call floral portraits, which tends more towards, I think, the fine arts side of plant photography. Although you will see a healthy mix of landscape photography within my work as well. So that's what I'm about, really.
Great, thank you. I was wondering if you could as well, with your background, where did it begin for you? Where did your passion for photography come from?
Many years ago, as a teen, I was very much interested in motorsport and wildlife, which is an odd mix. So I had a camera then, and then sort of lost interest with it sort of during my 20s, and then didn't pick up a camera in anger, I suppose, for another 30 years.
In anger? Why in anger?
Well, just the expression. No, I was just sort of, I suppose, perhaps not necessarily in denial, but I was interested to see how this newfangled era of digital rather than film photography was going to pan out. So I gave it time to gain momentum before I sort of jumped back in again. So I spent many years of not recording family life and not recording anything very much, really. And then just had a few trips overseas and thought, well, perhaps now is the time to sort of start dipping my toe back in the water, and the rest, as they say, is history.
And you're back now. So
I'm back now, yes.
How long has the Pure Image Works, how long has that been up now?
Probably 6-7 years now. It was a concept I had and I wanted to develop, and it probably took me as long to sort out things like logos and websites and presence and all the boring stuff before I really sort of got going with it. But it seemed to be the right time. I'd sort of started to develop what I thought was a reasonable body of work at that time, which I was happy to share with the public at large, if you like. Perhaps in hindsight, then it probably wasn't as good, because I think I've gone on to develop since then. And whilst I've still got a few of my old images in my catalogue, I think there is a marked improvement over time, but I think some of them still stand the test of time. It's just that probably my own perceived success rate is probably higher now than it was then.
That's a good sign that you're going in the right direction, at least, I suppose.
Well, I think so.
Yeah. I was especially interested in your flora and fauna ones that you had on there. I was wondering, what is it? Because you focus a lot on the centre of the flower. I suppose that's where it has the most colour. What do you kind of look for in which flowers you take a photo of? Any in particular you kind of gravitate towards? Or?
Some tend to be a little bit more, dare I say, photogenic than others. Some have more interest in the petal shape and the amount of petals and the colours and the textures, and that's why I think things like dahlias and roses particularly are very interesting, and also plants like alliums are a very broad genus as well, so you can get a really broad range of those, but they're not that probably well represented in my images. So yeah, you'll see a lot of roses, and also those plants which have petals which are more translucent. So things like clematis and rhododendrons and that sort of thing. They're very good, although they're very difficult to differentiate apart. So,
is that capturing them when the light source is like behind them then, that makes it translucent? Yeah,
very much so. Some petals are far more opaque on some flowers than others, so you just don't get the benefit of that. You get a nice silhouette, but you don't actually get that light shining through and emphasizing the patterns and colors quite so much.
Is there a particular lens you use to get those macro shots of the flowers, like the
yeah, there is. I've got a favorite macro lens which I use, which unfortunately at the moment is in being repaired, and hopefully it will come back. Otherwise, I've got to find another one. But with all these things, invariably your favorite one, like mine, isn't actually available anymore. The manufacturer stopped making it. So yeah, fingers crossed in the next week or so I will hopefully get it back and we can start taking photographs again. But I've still got a reasonable catalogue of back images which I haven't processed yet, which I will be processing in time for the exhibition, some of those. So there'll be some new images there. But over the last 18 months or so, it's been very quiet. Yeah, I mean, all I've really produced in that time is probably, I did a photo book of some images which are very specific, which you won't have seen yet because they're not on the website. But they have a very black background. They almost look like studio shots, apart from they're not. They are all taken in the wild, in gardens. It's just the way I photograph them. There are some on the website, like the blue iris is a typical one of those, which, yeah, again, because of the way I shoot and the time of day I shoot, which is contrary to when a lot of photographers shoot, I'm actually be able to promote that dark background and to make the flowers sort of stand out and sing a bit. And I think there's also an image of a dandelion clock as well on there as well, which is very similar.
I know on your website you said about that you like to use natural light. When it comes to getting the black background and things, do you use editing software for that, or is it all in kind of the settings and things?
No, it's all in natural light. Some of those are taken in my back garden. And I'm very much for keeping things simple. So I'm not interested in lugging lights around with me. I don't even use a flash. So it is purely based on natural light, available light at the time. And again, like I say, if I spend more than 10 minutes, quarter of an hour working on a particular image on the computer, that's too long for me. Because I became a photographer really to take photographs, not just to sit in front of a computer.
No, I think that's a good. You get outdoors more and spend less time on the computer. I can definitely understand that.
Yes.
Especially in this weather as well.
Yes.
And I've seen as well you have one of your collections is places, and you have quite a few images on there from National Trust type properties. Mm-hmm. Is that a commission you worked on or private?
No, without going into the ins and outs with National Trust properties, because of the size of the organisation they are, they have very strict guidelines as to what you can do with them. So whilst I can show them on the website, I'm not allowed to sell them. They're just there as an opportunity to show my skills, if you like, rather than anything else. Other places are a little bit different. Some people are quite happy, but no, you just have to be respectful. At the end of the day, a lot of these places, if they're open to the public, have their own ideas about how they want themselves to be represented. So they try and control things as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a favourite place that you go to for your photography? Do you have set spots now on your map that you know if you go there you'll find something?
It's getting a bit fuller, although the way the weather is at the moment, it's thrown a little bit more guesswork into the equation. This year I've changed my mind about where I would possibly go and shoot bluebells. So I found somewhere new this year, which is better than my old place. And I have a place where I go and shoot snowdrops, and we have some gardens locally who have some amazing roses to photograph. But yeah, there's something you can pick from lots of different places, because I just don't concentrate on one type of flower. Then you can spread yourself around a bit, and gardens change over time. So there's always new plantings and people doing different things.
Do you find then you're kind of looking at the seasons sometimes, and which flowers when are coming in bloom, so you don't miss out on that window to take pictures?
It is a bit like that, yeah. And even then you can get it wrong. And I'm still sort of really hunting for a flower with wild poppies in, but not only is that dependent on the seasons, it also depends on when the farmer decides he's going to leave a field fallow, which isn't necessarily always the same each year. So again, more guesswork to add into the equation.
Are you part of any photography groups on Facebook or anything in which other people can kind of share, where to go and where not?
No, I tend to be, most of the places I go in terms of landscapes are quite well known, and I tend to pick up a few ideas from other people, but at the same time I don't necessarily want to end up going to the same place as everybody else, because then my images will look the same as everybody else's. And it took me quite a while to work out, and I'm still trying to work out now, how to represent flowers in a different way. So to go to a landscape and try and represent that in a different way is far more difficult in my mind than it is to go and try and find a different landscape which people know less well, if you like. I try to use different angles and different compositions. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes my visualization is beyond my capabilities, or my camera's capabilities, should I say. And sometimes what you visualize in your mind as to what you think is going to be a good shot, you take it, you think, no, that doesn't actually work. So it's back to the drawing board again. A lot of people can take a picture of a nice flower straight up, and yeah, it looks great. But you've really got to find something different nowadays. Since the advent of camera phones, and the fact that they are getting more and more better in terms of their reproduction, photographers are struggling with, if you like, the democratization of photography, because everybody feels they can take good images. So, and another ongoing battle.
How do you feel then again about social media and things, and how that's kind of affected your business as a photographer?
It's got its place. Yeah, that's fine. And there's nothing, and you can take some really good pictures with camera phones. That does, I don't have an issue with that. And in fact, a number of top flight photographers have embraced that now. I mean, Rankin, for example, takes a lot of photographs with phones. And it's something he's pushed a bit more, perhaps slightly less purist than some photographers. But it's whether you have that compositional eye, and if you have that, then that's fine. You'll go a long way. Some people have it, some people don't. I was rather frustrated because my son seemed to have it from about 5. Yeah, it's an inherent sort of trait that you have. It's not some you can learn it, but yeah, it's far better if it's in your soul, if you like.
So is your son a photographer as well then, or is it like a hobby, more of a hobby than?
No, he's a fine artist. So
Okay.
So yeah, he has all the artistic talent, and I take photographs.
Does he use your photographs ever for like reference for his artwork?
No, his work is very different than mine. So we're quite safe as far as that's concerned. We won't. I don't think we'll ever borrow anything from each other. Professionally, a lot of photographers struggle at the moment, particularly in the field that I tend to work in, which is floral and garden photography, because and I'm sure it's the case across many other genres of photography. If you're trying to sell your images to publications, the prices you can command now are a lot lower than they were 10, 20 years ago, because they know there is a dearth of photography out there for reproduction in a magazine at a fraction of the cost, or even free.
Is there any advice you have for photographers who are kind of approaching publications on how to deal with that? If someone's telling them it's a price which, if they think it's worth more than what they're being told, how do you kind of navigate that?
Well, it's like the same with any art, isn't it? I talk to a number of artists, and there is this real battle going on as to whether you sell an image or a painting or a piece of sculpture, whatever it is, whether you price it at a price you're going to sell it at, or whether you price it at the price you think it's worth. And if you then sell it, do you feel you sold it too cheap? Or then do you think, well, actually, I've still got it and I could have done with selling it to realize some money? And it's a difficult one. And a lot of people say you shouldn't undervalue your time or your work. But sometimes economic realities get in the way sometimes.
How did you find last year?
Rather surreal. I mean, I had got to the point where I was sort of transitioning between having a real job and actually moving towards becoming a full-time professional photographer. And I'd started doing some work, and I was also building up some one-to-one workshops and classes and that sort of thing. And because of the work that I do, of course, all the gardens closed. You weren't allowed to meet. So it was bad timing, but these things happen. And as it was, I've tended to go more back towards having a real job at the moment, which has made my exposure more to gardens and photography coming out this end of the lockdowns a lot slower, because I can't just decide on the next day, I'll go to such and such a garden or whatever. Unfortunately, I have to go to work.
And then it's annoying because then it's the weather forecast. You get the right weather and you're at work, and then the day you're off work, and then it's the weather you don't want.
Well, invariably, like it's like this weekend it's going to rain, so that was really good timing, So you just have to learn and adapt, and if you are a fair weather photographer, then you lose out on some opportunities, shall we say. I'm quite happy to go out in drizzle or after it's rained or with grey skies, and you'll always find something to photograph, and you'll always find a virtue with those conditions. Torrential rain is a bit more difficult, but you can pretty much photograph in most conditions and get some decent images out of that.
So I had a brief photography course, and we were kind of taught about this golden hour, and everyone kept going on about this golden hour of photography. So would your kind of advice be to photographers starting out and things to kind of break out of that you have these set times of the day and these set weathers that you should just go out and try different things and see what works best?
I think you will learn more technically if you don't stick to those times of the day. Certainly if you're learning from books or self-help books or whatever you can buy, most of the images are taken during the most perfect conditions. But that doesn't really help you if you go out and you're intent on going, and you're intent on going out and you've only got a certain amount of time and you want to take some images, and all of a sudden the weather doesn't do what you want it to do or what it should be doing. You need to be able to work out how to get around that situation. So if you force yourself to go out when it's not meant to be the best time, then I think you learn more. It gives you more flexibility in your practice. You know, everybody says the golden hour or the blue hour, which is the corresponding one in the morning, are great. That's lovely. I often go out at midday when you're not meant to. And that's when I can throw a lot of backgrounds very dark because of the harsh light. You also don't have to worry about shadows if the sun is right overhead. So you get a good concentration on your subject. Or even the hours either side of midday, if you want some really strong graphic images with shadows, because that's when you're going to get your shadows. You know, yeah. So any time really.
Have you found with teaching and things, do people reach out to you that they're interested in kind of learning more about what you do, and like I was asking about what lens you use and things, do you notice those kind of questions coming through?
Yeah, I think so, but I must admit, most of my teaching I like to do with sort of fairly early beginners and that sort of thing, because I can give them a good background and then they can go off and do whatever subject or genre they want. And you know, I've still got my kit from when they were when I was at the same stage as they were, so I know the limitations of the equipment. I know the expense involved and what can be afforded, and you don't need £1,000 worth of kit. You know, you can do it a lot cheaper than that. I don't spend a huge amount of money on my kit. I know what I like, and predominantly most of my equipment is actually sort of secondhand. So I'm not exactly slavishly following the latest trends or fashions. I just know what I need and what I like. And most times I go out, I'll probably take two or three lenses, and that's it. That's all I take to cover a whole day's photography, because that's all I need. And the same with someone starting. You know, you can get away with a couple of lenses, and that's it.
When you were starting out, did you find was there anything kind of strange or different that you used to take photography? I know people use like glasses and things, like the effect of looking through glass and things. Is there any kind of odd things that people might not expect that you kind of experimented with using, or has it always been natural light and just your camera?
Mainly natural light and my camera. I like a good dewdrop the same way as anybody else does, you know. But thankfully I don't mind getting up too early in the morning, so that's quite handy. But water is very good, reflections are very good. So again, you don't need, you know, too much to work with there. No, I'm not really that much into gimmicks. You know, some people use a glass ball that you can photograph through, which inverts the image and gives it a slightly fisheye effect. But that's fine. You'll probably take one or two of those, but you can't have a whole gallery of those really. It probably looks a bit samey after a while. But some people might say that about my photographs, but okay.
Because I was going to ask if there was any other photographers you're inspired by. but I feel like from what you've said, I'm not sure what your response would be to that.
There are some very classic images of well-known photographers who are inspirational, and I try and work towards or have an influence on. Edward Weston, from back in the early 20th century, did a whole series of black and white photographers, very graphic, of vegetables, oddly enough. And they're very classic. And I like the lines that Georgia O'Keeffe managed as well in her artwork and her floral stuff. And Mapplethorpe also did a whole series of photography on flowers, which again are very, I mean, they are studio based, but again, very classic, but very clever and very graphic. Now, whilst I don't want to spend time in the studio, if I can recreate those sort of images outside in gardens, in the wild, by using natural light, then that's something for me to strive towards, you know.
Do you find it quite kind of exciting when you go to, I assume you take your camera with you when you're traveling, when you go to kind of different climates and countries, and kind of the wildlife they have there? Do you have a spot in particular you've been to?
Certainly 2 or 3 years ago, must be 3 years ago now, I spent some time in Western Australia. And it's the first time I've been to Western Australia, and that area is lovely, and I'm planning to go back in their spring at some point, because they have amazing wildflowers over there. And I've also really liked going to Cuba as well, because their vegetation and their flowers are so different than ours. Although virtually, I think all of my Cuban shots are actually just taken on a compact. I don't take my full kit with me. I think there's a slight social and moral superiority complex that you could impart on society there if you turned up and said, "Hi, you know, hi, look at my kit. I'm sort of the rich Westerner here, you know." And I think they have enough problems to deal with over there without people coming rubbing their noses in that sort of thing.
So you try and blend in a bit more, essentially.
Yeah. You never can do that. I mean, they'll always go, "Oh, look, there's a tourist," but you know, you can do it without being sort of too ostentatious.
And are you a part of any art communities? I think I was reading about that you're part of the Garden Media Guild and the Professional Garden Photographers Association. Are they local to the south?
No, they're national and international as well, but predominantly national. And they were initially set up to represent. It was predominantly writers, but it's writers and broadcasters of radio and TV, and writers within the horticultural industry, and also garden suppliers and owners, and just generally represent them as an old-fashioned guild would do, look after their interests. And it's not exactly a trade union, but and then the Professional Gardeners Photographers Association is a subset of the guild, and certainly that, you know, they represent us, our interests, quite strongly, particularly around things like copyrights and reducing our earning levels, if you like, with particularly the print media at the moment. So you have to apply. They have certain criteria, and I think the photography one is probably quite strict. Certainly that's, I mean, it's predominantly UK, but a lot of the names that you would see credited with photographs in gardening magazines or lifestyle magazines, you would recognize as being the members of that group. And it's not, it's not an elite group, but there are only sort of just over 100 members. And I think the biggest issue there is that it's not a field of interest or a career path that many people want to follow. You don't all of a sudden come out of universities thinking, I've got my MA in photography, what will I do? Will I go and do fashion with all the glitter and glitz that might entail, or will I go and take photographs of gardens? It tends to be the former.
And I was also reading recently on your Facebook that you've just finished exhibiting at the Yellow Edge Gallery.
Yep.
All right, how did that go?
It was a bit frenetic, I must admit, because I suddenly realised I had a week to get my images there, which hadn't been printed at that time. And they arrived. They looked very nice. I mean, obviously, people didn't have enough taste to buy any of them, but you know, that's their choice. It means that I'll be able to bring them along to the exhibition at the end of August if they're not sold beforehand. But yeah, that's the most recent one I've done. And I've also got an image in the Artisan Gallery down in Torbay for their summer open exhibition as well. And also some images in Leeds. That's Airplace Gallery, which has been running for a while. Yeah, it can be quite lucrative. It's a way of getting your images seen out of your local area. And certainly within the gallery space, I can actually represent the images in the way I like them to be represented, you know, because they are a little bit more, the finishes I apply to them make them a little bit more expensive, more sort of, and it's not just because they're in a gallery, but for example, I print a lot of my more recent images which benefit from them onto aluminium. So they're edge to edge, there's no frames. And because they have black backgrounds, they really make the floral subjects sort of almost pop out of the image itself. And it just sort of really enhances the colors and the presentation. And the ones that I had printed up for Yellow Edge were actually had an acrylic finish to them. So they're sandwiched between two very fine layers of acrylic. And again, you get that similar increased depth to the image.
And is there anything else in the future lined up for you? Any other projects that you want to add?
No, I'm doing a little bit more landscape work now. Purely, I mean, I find that more of a challenge to get a decent landscape image because purely I'm not used to doing that. I'm not tempted to go and do things like wedding photographs or portraits or anything like that. So that's fine. I find that flowers and trees and that sort of thing don't tend to talk back or have ideas of what they look like. So that's always handy. No, I mean, I am quite tempted. I have been thinking about it for a while, actually trying to do some infrared photography because I think some of the images from that are quite stunning, but I just haven't made that step yet and made that investment. So that may be something I do in the future, or coming up this winter, if we are still restricted to being in this country, then I may well do some studio photography. But may well go and take studio images of vegetables and things like that. I mean, I had a dabble earlier in the year, and I tried to replicate Weston's image of a cabbage, which if you haven't seen, you'll probably ought to go and look it up, because it is quite stunning and rather amazing for the humble cabbage. But so I might try that.
Well, I look forward to seeing what photography you have at the exhibition, and thank you for being on this interview as well. I know you're quite a busy person at the moment, so it's quite hard to find the time.
Yeah, sorry about that. And if it all helps, towards the success of the exhibition, then all the best. Okay, right. Brilliant.
Right, well, thank you.
No problem at all.
Bye.
Okay, bye then.